So this Let's Eat seminar series emerged out of the Seeding Transformation Global Forum held in Vermont this past September. A working group emerged out of that process, seeking to explore how we can develop educational programs to support agroecological transformations. Recognizing that there are an increasing number of colleges and universities with agroecology working on agroecology, the committee has planned a seminar series to share examples, stories, learnings amongst educators and higher education from different contexts and anybody who wants to figure out and learn about these processes. So in this context, we're hoping to share experiences for co-learning and the exchange of ideas, curriculum, pedagogies, and the institutional innovations to better understand what higher education for transformation looks like in different contexts, and think about what are the theories of changes, the challenges, and ways to deepen and grow higher education's commitment to supporting agroecology and social transformation. We aim to cultivate a community of practice amongst university-based education programs and to create an open space for sharing. So to kick us off, we've invited Georgina Catacora Vargas to come, who is the president of SOCLA, to come and give us a little bit of framing about education, pedagogy, and transformation. Georgina?
Thanks, Colin. Well, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who is on this webinar. I would like to thank the team of the University of Vermont for the invitation to share some ideas in this first webinar of this first series organized by Educate for Agroecological Transformation Initiative. Thank you very much. I feel very flattered to participate in this premiere. And now I am going to shift to Spanish to share some of the ideas. Y bueno, me pidieron compartir sobre por qué
they asked me to share about why we need to rethink the transformation of education in universities. The motivations are diverse and they depend on the institutional context of every place. Universities, since their foundation, have been formal institutions for education, where we have developed knowledge frames for each context. Wait, I'm trying to... In today's context of agriculture and food systems, with the multiple crises we are living, we recognize that the development of knowledge and teaching processes cannot come only from, and also we recognize that what is produced in universities must not include just one perspective. So when we have decided to teach agroecology, we decide to diversify the possibilities for teaching and knowledge for ecosystem management in each context, and also focusing in health through food, through ecosystem health, and through generating the possibilities of taking action directed to each context. That is what agroecology gives us and what teaching in agroecology must do. So teaching agroecology in universities is a very important subject that contributes. That means thinking, what are we teaching, what are we learning, and what are we investigating, and what evidence we are generating to take decisions from. So we must think what we want to teach. Teaching and knowledge generation in universities has been historically a positivist perspective, which has had very valuable results, but it is It has a reduced methodology portfolio that does not answer for all the contexts in the world. So we need a diversity of methodologies too that integrates the different ways of thinking. So agroecology as a proposal for taking care of life inherently has to include the diversity of knowledges and of visions in order to really share knowledge. So agroecology is not only a technical proposal, it is also a philosophical proposal that must include diversity of thinking, and it must include an epistemological and a methodological diversity. This is also related with the ways of doing things. For example, many of the methodologies in the university teaching responds to male and adult visions, but in agroecology, the proposal must also recognize very clearly the analytical and methodological products of women and of indigenous people and of young people. Not only students, but also the young investigators. So when we propose to work on the teaching of agroecology, we are not just talking about rethinking what we want to teach, but also who we want to teach. And we must do this from the richness of the context of each university in the different places of the world. So this is a very ambitious proposal which must be transformative, and that comes from the recognition that those who have the privilege to be in the position of teaching must also learn and deconstruct and relearn things with more integral perspectives from an ethical pedagogy like the one that agroecology proposes. We must recognize that academia is not a uniform place. It is heterogeneous, and those of us who come with these transformative proposals, we also need to relearn and to advance in solidarity amongst each other and amongst other actors that are outside from academy. So what we hope for with this initiative is to generate a place for reflection and for co-learning and co-teaching, so we can continue with the pedagogical processes that are creative and that are inspiring for the teaching and learning of agroecology. This will allow us to be consistent with the different territories in where we work. So thank you for letting me be part of this initiative and to walk along with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgina. Just again, want to acknowledge and thank the organizing committee that's been a part of putting this together so far, and there's been more people joining since. And we're now going to jump into the presentation of the University of Vermont's graduate certificate in agroecology. And I would invite Katie Horner to come and speak. Katie?
Hi, everyone. Thank you again for being here with us today. On this slide, you see an overview of what we're going to cover in this session. To get started, I want to again welcome everyone into this virtual space, and I invite you to take a moment to do whatever you need to do to be fully present during this session. Maybe that is closing your email or silencing your phone. I am going to take one long, slow breath, and you are welcome to join me. And I am so grateful to be able to breathe with people who are enacting agroecology in so many different parts of the world. So as you can see on this slide, we are going to dive right into some small breakout groups. And that is one of many ways we're trying to demonstrate our pedagogy in this session, not just talk about it. We really want our strategies for teaching and learning to be engaged and participatory, which is hard to do virtually, but we'll do our best. After breakouts, Colin, Martha, and Ernesto will give a 30-minute presentation on the Institute for Agroecology's Certificate of Graduate Study in Agroecology. Following their presentation, we'll have another chance to discuss things in small groups before we come back together for a final group shareback. So before we start to describe what and how we teach, I want to give you a sense for who we are. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. The Institute for Agroecology is housed at the University of Vermont. Martha is going to share more about what we do later in the presentation, but for now, I want to quickly say we focus on advancing agroecology through research, education, technical support, communication and storytelling, and bringing people together. Today, we'll be focusing on our Certificate of Graduate Study in Agroecology, which is one of our core educational offerings. It is a 15-credit program centered on transformative agroecology. You're going to hear a lot more about this program today, how it has evolved, how it exists now, what we have learned along the way. But we wanted to just give you this high-level sense before we dive in. So next slide, please. Now that everyone has some basic sense of what we'll cover today, let's get you all talking. One of the things we think a lot about, as Georgina was speaking to, is the role of transformation in both agroecology and education. So we're going to put everyone into small groups to discuss this. And we want to know, what approaches to teaching and learning do you think of as being transformative? We know that both agroecology and education happen in so many different contexts, and there's so much experience in this virtual room here today. So we want to hear about what transformative agroecology education is to you.
Buenos días, buenas tardes, good morning, good afternoon. I'm Ernesto Mendez. I am also one of the co-directors of the
Soy también uno de los codirectores del Instituto para.
I'm so happy for all of us to be gathered here to discuss education for agroecological transformations. To metaphorically illustrate the journey of the Certificate for Graduate Study in Agroecology, which I will now call CGSA, because it's a lot of words, we will be using a river of life. And I will be assisted in this by my fellow co-directors, Colin Anderson and Martha Caswell. And first, we will go to the beginning, as we say in Spanish, el nacimiento, or where the river was born. So the CGSA has a legacy that started with the intensive international agroecology short courses that were developed by Steve Gleesman, is an agroecology pioneer and professor emeritus at the University of California at Santa Cruz. He was also my graduate mentor at UCSC. And I don't know how many of these courses Steve has done in his lifetime, but I started to help coordinate them with him in 1999. So quite a while ago. And these short courses were about 2 weeks in length. And participants were invited to either Santa Cruz, California, or Latin America in one location where we had a person in our network to engage in a full throttle agroecology journey for the duration of the course. They were very intense for both participants and instructors. When I came to the University of Vermont, or UVM, Steve was open to try teaching the courses here. And the first one of these happened in 2009. Then a second one happened in 2013. And in this table, you can see some of the courses that happened between 2009 and 2016 in Latin America, one in Africa, and also in Vermont and in Santa Cruz, California. So now we're going to move to the second stop on our riverine journey. And it's a moment for us to take a pause, take a breath, and then observe what's happening in this moment. So here in Santa Cruz, what was happening is that as we were coming out of the intense experience of the 2013 short course, the UVM team pondered on some clear lessons that we had learned after this delivery. First, that there was a demand for this type of learning. All of the participants were very excited. There were more people that wanted to come that weren't able to make it. We also felt that it aligned with our principles of agroecology and co-learning. But it was also obvious that it was too intense. Once again, it was very intense for both participants and instructors. And this generated a seed for us to seek some alternatives that would, one, respond to this interest that we were seeing in a diversity of learners that wanted to learn more agroecology, but that could also be more compassionate to both participants and instructors. And in addition, we were starting to sense at the university some pressure about trying to do this in a way that was going to be credit bearing, which is what the university wants. Because they were seeing that agroecology was growing and that the international profile of these courses was really good for the institution. We found an opportunity through the former UVM College of Continuing and Distance Education, and they proposed that we create an online master's program in agroecology. However, at the time, there was already an existing master's food systems, and we did not want to compete with them. We met with them, we talked about it, and decided that it was better for us to develop this hybrid certificate of graduate study. And this certificate would have 5 courses, which you can see here on the slide, with 4 of them being fully online. And then there was 1 hybrid course that we would teach in the summer that had both online and in-person delivery here in Vermont. So participants would take some content online and then would come to Vermont for about a week for the in-person portion of it. Once this decision was made, Martha Caswell, Vic Izzo, and I engaged in a process of developing a proposal to the university that would eventually establish the CGSA with an official launch in 2017. Since its inception, our certificate allowed for people...
Nuestro certificado ha permitido que gente tome cursos con o sin créditos, así como el certificado de...
A certificate degree. This is important because being able to fill our courses with a diversity of learners has had several advantages and challenges, and we will be discussing this throughout the presentation. We are now downriver at our 3rd stop, where again we can pause and observe. Always breathing is good, and reflecting on what was happening on this 3rd moment of our journey of the CGSA. Since its launch in 2017, the CGSA became a learning space that served graduate students and professionals that took either the full certificate or specific courses. People could enroll in a cheaper non-credit version through the College of Continuing and Distance Education, or do a 4-credit option at a reduced but still considerable tuition. So it was obvious for us that access was an issue for many participants, or participants that wanted to take courses or the certificate, but who had limited financial resources, especially those in the Global South. This is a challenge that we continue to grapple with, and it's very complicated given the context where we are operating. The certificate courses were delivered through the UVM online platform. You can see here in one corner, for most of its existence, the CGSA used Blackboard, Now we have moved to a new online platform. And then the in-person portion, like I said before, took place in Vermont during the summers and engaged with farmer and organizational partners from across the Vermont food system. At this point, we were also hearing from learners about their interest for courses that were more focused on specific topics. Facilitation has been something that comes up for a lot of people interested in transformative agroecology, for example. And moving out of our third stop, you can see this signal that you see on the roads when something is happening, an accident maybe. And for us, it was that we had encountered a full shocking stop, which was caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. And here we had to really pause and assess how to move forward in terms of teaching our hybrid summer course when the restrictions of COVID were preventing people to gather in groups all over the world. So we really had to take a deep breath and think carefully about what we were going to do. And even with all the suffering and challenges that were caused by the pandemic, as we know, the world, as well as our CGSA program, continued. So we made the decision to move forward, but we had to adapt to the conditions imposed by the pandemic. So that meant that we would have to go fully online for the first time since our launch in 2017. So in the summer of 2020, our co-learning team went into full gear to creatively deliver our previously hybrid course to one that was fully online. This created challenges. The challenges were mostly about how to substitute for our in-person content, which before had brought people to Vermont and had farmers on their farms and with people in the Vermont food system. Again, Vic, Martha, also Claire Wiggin, myself, and many others in our team shifted to record videos of farm tours, organize live sessions with farmers and Vermont actors, which was very intense logistically and also technologically, but we did pull it off. And we went fully online and have remained that way until now. One of the clear opportunities from going fully online was the broad access that it gave to people that weren't able to afford to come to Vermont for a week. We had more people from more places than ever before during that summer course. Moving on to our fifth stop, we're breathing again and observing. And now I have the pleasure of passing it on to my colleague, Colin Anderson, who will be sharing with you the content and pedagogy of one of our courses. Colin.
Thank you, Ernesto. So one of the things that we've been thinking about is considering how to do online education well, acknowledging the limitations, but also leaning into the potentials and working creatively to mitigate the downsides that come from an online learning environment. So this course on participatory and action research and transdisciplinary agroecology really leans into and focuses in on knowledge. Knowledge co-creation is an important part of agroecology. So in this class, there are 15 weekly online interactive meetings with material that people and work that people do outside of the class. There are participants from the University of Vermont, largely graduate students from UVM, and elsewhere there's a non-credit option, and we have mixed cohorts. So in this class, over the last 3 years that I've taught it, there's generally been people who are based in the United States at other universities mixing with the UVM crowd, but also people from different parts of the world, from Europe, from Africa, from Latin America, and even 1 year from Pakistan, which created a very difficult time zone difference that we had to deal with. But these mixed cohorts. Next slide. So the objectives of this course is first to think about what is the distinctiveness of participatory action research and transdisciplinary approaches and what sets them apart from other ways of knowing and creating knowledge. It's really important to think about the politics of knowledge and how knowledge and research is situated, gendered, racialized, and colonial. And it's vital that participatory action researchers and researchers consider that in their praxis. And so, again, thinking about how those dynamics influence the research process, give people an opportunity to learn from participatory action research and practice, especially focusing on case studies, understanding the design process of participatory action research, thinking about the positionality, who people are and why that matters for doing research in relation to the politics of knowledge, and then equip people with strategies for critical self and collective reflection. So to give you a sense, the flow of the course has generally 3 modules. At the beginning of the class, because students are getting oriented and joining and learning about kind of getting their feet underneath them, it's a largely predetermined curriculum. And so that's for the first month. But as the course progresses in modules 2 and 3, the curriculum is co-constructed with the students. And so identifying approaches, methods, examples, and special topics that are of interest to students, and really having the learning community shape the curriculum. Next. So some of the core features of the pedagogy in the class are, one is really building a learning community. In an online space, it's difficult to build community. And so there's a lot of emphasis of that on the beginning, which provides the foundation upon which we can learn about agroecology and participatory action research. We also co-teach. I've taught with everybody that's spoken so far from UVM, as well as Nils, who's helping with interpretation, Nils McCune. Be able to bring different perspectives from different teachers together in the co-construction of the course with students. We bring in a lot of guest practitioners, knowing that a lot of voices and practitioners of PAR aren't at UVM and are elsewhere, and bring a lot of experience into the classroom. This idea of co-constructing the curriculum is vital so that we can be sure that we're focusing on issues and topics that are important to the class and to the learning. Rotating roles, so students also play roles as teachers, facilitators, note takers, and that's a core part of the class. This learning community is really a space of intercultural and international exchange and co-learning, and the experiences and the knowledge brought from different people in these different locations from different life experiences is fundamentally important for the learning environment, and is something that the online space has really enabled. The class focuses in on people's reflexive praxis. So if you are going to be a participatory action research, how can you reflect on the politics of knowledge, who you are, and how do you continually hone those skills? And then exploring participatory action research in different locations, whether you're a student or you're in an NGO or a social movement organization, really meeting people where they are and trying to think about how to support them in their journey. Next. So just to give you a flavor of one of the 3 modules, in the first module, we are talking a lot about positionality, decolonizing research, free area praxis. One of the practices that we do right at the very beginning is ask students to each develop a river of life. So this metaphorical river, much like the river that we're sharing and talking about the history of this certificate program, a history of life, of someone's life that has brought them to this particular moment, joining a class on participatory action research. What has brought you there? What have been the key things that you've experienced in your life that have brought you to this moment? This creates an opportunity for students to share with one another in small groups, and those small groups remain together through the duration of the course, and to really get to know one another and to be able to express themselves, again, thinking about what that means for them, their work as researchers and their positionality. And then there's quite a lot of work in beginning to co-construct the curriculum and designing the remainder of the class in the future modules. Next. We also think about this interconnected relational spaces of learning. So we have the individual and the inward-looking reflection, which is largely facilitated through a manifesto that people develop as their final project for the course, their main final project for the course. So again, looking inwards and thinking about themselves and who they are. We also have this process of critical friendship, so putting people in pairs. We have small groups that get together several times through the duration of the course and do things. There's this Let's Get Practical sessions where people are able to share a dilemma or a project and get dedicated feedback and very careful feedback. And then the small groups also come together to host an interactive session on a topic of their choosing. And then of course, the whole group class and the interactive classes that we undertake together, and really thinking about the learning that crosses, that works across those different relational spaces. The next slide gets at this even more. So this is the integrated assignment. So the manifesto that people develop throughout the class. So the first part of the manifesto is really focused on situating themselves, thinking about that river of life, what it means in terms of who they are as a researcher and what they want to do, and articulating that in a way that the kind of a statement of positionality. They write that up. They then have a meeting with their critical friend. Now, their critical friend can be someone that they choose from the class or someone that they choose from their life, a colleague, a peer. They then discuss, the peer reads that piece of work and they have discussion on it. And then that can be refined and then added to the final manifesto. Then the students in the second part of the class really think about their values, their research philosophy, their approach, and sketch out what their plans for research are over the next several years. They do that, then they again share that with a critical friend, have an opportunity to discuss, to have constructive criticism and feedback given, and then to be able to refine that piece. And finally, in the third part, they systematize their critical friendship and their self-collective growth and learning. So really thinking about how can I, after this class, continue this process of learning and growth. And that all is put together into a final manifesto that we anticipate and have gotten feedback that has been a really useful process for people in refining their practices as they go forward. That's it. Over to you, Martha. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. So as we take our next breath, you'll note a logo sitting between the last two numbers and our river. And this deserves a big breath. So we'll breathe in and out together, because in the background, in the last few years, as we've been teaching and writing and researching and working in community, we've also been moving our work from being the Agroecology and Livelihoods Collaborative to the status of a fully recognized university-wide institute. And so on that path, we've talked to lots of people about how to best make use of our positionality in a land-grant university in the US. And all of those folks, people in the University of Vermont and outside, how we can best advance agroecology from here, and what they thought the most important levers to pull. So there's no coincidence also that the timing of most of this river that we've shared to date maps onto changes in global acceptance of and perception and adoption of agroecology. So more organizations have been publicly aligning with agroecology over this time, and many more offerings for courses and intensive learning opportunities were emerging. Next slide, please, Ernesto. So both what was happening in the world and this opportunity at UVM pushed our thinking for imagining and designing the Institute. And we wanted to make sure that we were representing an agroecology that wasn't limited to practices and recommendations, but that also fully centered the political orientation of what sometimes is called transformative agroecology. And we have gotten some pushback around the idea that the word transformative needs to be stated. Since for many of us, transformative is given. If we're talking about agroecology, it is necessarily transformative. We agree with that, and we are also trying to explicitly signal our orientation to folks who might have a depoliticized understanding of what agroecology is. So what we mean by transformative is explicitly in service of radical change, shifting power within agriculture and food systems, and seeking to achieve ecologically sound, socially just, and economically viable ends. And we do that, we believe, by better understanding the multiple dimensions and interactions in our food systems and integrating social and natural sciences with local indigenous knowledge through ecological, sociocultural, economic, and political processes. So we almost are celebrating our year birthday. We were recognized as an institute in May of last year and shared then with the world 3 pillars that hold up our work that are here on the slide. The first is just sustainability, which to us is systems analysis that takes on structural issues and values the process of social transformation that's part of change making, in addition to practical, political, and environmental shifts that are needed. The second is exactly what Colin was just talking about in terms of trying as much as possible to base our work in a participatory action research approach, where we name and engage with the politics of knowledge, are working to dismantle hierarchies of knowledge, and finding ways to co-learn and co-create in reciprocal relationships. And we are also trying to deeply center equity in all that we do. And to us, that means seeing and naming and interrupting power imbalances and exploitative relationships, and using our positionality to shift what's possible and change what's expected. So since we have become an institute, part of what we're doing is creating new projects and programs. And part of what we're doing is trying to make sure that we update what we're already doing to match where we want to be as an institute. So in service of that, the team of us that teach these courses works together to create a list of shared pedagogical commitments that support the work that we want to be doing. And so on this slide, we're sharing a few of these. And the first of these that we're going to talk about is attending to the politics of knowledge. So that's lots of what Colin was talking about. And what that means to us is decentering privileged perspectives, centering peasants and indigenous people as carriers, and to us, importantly, the originators of agroecological knowledge. And then always throughout the way that we teach the course and the conversations that we have, encouraging awareness of positionality and agency within these systems. So we want people not only to be learning, but to be thinking about how they activate their learning as part of what we're doing in our courses. We're also really focused on deconstructing the human nature divide. And part of what we're trying to do is think about the pedagogy to get to these ends of our pedagogical commitments. And so again, Colin mentioned several of these, but what we're trying to do is facilitate horizontal co-learning environments. So bringing in the experience of the participants as much as possible, not just as people who have signed up for the course, but who can share with us what it looks like in their context as ways of enriching the conversations and dialogues that we're having in class, making opportunities for applied and experiential learning. So again, not just thinking about this with our brains, but figuring out how to live it with our hearts and our hands, nurturing critical thinking, cultivating creativity, and with credit, and again, an acknowledgement of lineage, looking back at the Francis et al. Article, that we're really encouraging all of us to become agroecologists. And in that, we are working on building skills in observation, reflection, participation, dialoguing, and visioning. So it might look shiny and beautiful on this slideshow, but this process has also included a lot of reflection and places where we recognize that our ambitions and our implementation are not aligned. And so we want to share some of these with you right now, and then we're happy to talk about others when we have a chance to be in conversation a little bit later on. So the first one is that logistics are real. It's really hard to find the right people who are going to thrive in a context that is fully online, where we are trying to have all of the conversation in English language. What it looks like when we have people who want to participate, and a phone is the best way that they are going to be able to connect with us, and the learning platform that UVM uses not being very accessible through something like a telephone. The second is something that both Ernesto and Colin have mentioned, which is our commitment to mixed cohorts of learners, where we think there is incredible richness that is achieved by bringing folks who are in the depths of deep study on these topics and also out in the world living and working agroecology, but that creates challenges for co-instruction and learning, where we have to decide what time to set classes. When we are looking at folks who are trying to be across multiple time zones, we never can get it into a perfectly convenient time for everyone. How do we manage assignments? How do we manage the fact that some of the people in these groups are working, and so they are going to be wanting to do their homework on the weekend, and others are wanting to get everything done during the week. And these might seem like small things, but they turn into bigger things when we're attempting to create groups that meet outside of class across these time zones, and considering that people are often in very different contexts and stages of life. The final one that we want to bring up here in this space is that we are finding it hard to maintain and uphold our commitment to equity and the multiple ways of knowing because of where we are coming from. So we are in and work out of an institution that is a capitalist institution and is focused on maximizing earnings. The way we survive is through tuition. And that is also very committed to traditional grading systems. Sometimes these are not the best way that we believe to do the work. And so what we're trying to figure out is what are the creative ways through challenges like this? So I'll stop here and pass it back to Katie.
Thank you so much for sharing that long journey that you all have taken to get us here today, Colin, Martha, and Ernesto, for taking us on that river of life. So now that you've heard a bit more about the Certificate of Graduate Study in Agroecology, we would love to put you back into small groups to discuss what you've heard. And we've shared some of our challenges with you and some of our takeaways, our learning. We'd like to hear from you. How does our approach align with what you understand to be a transformative and political orientation to agroecology? And we'd also love to hear what suggestions you might have for how we can improve in terms of accessibility, content, pedagogy. We would love your perspective to learn and grow and improve. Now we just have a few minutes to share back. And everybody is feeling very shy today. I
can come in.
Oh, thank you, Witness.
Okay.
Yeah, with my group members.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Yeah, I think for me, it's just to say I found this presentation, this talk quite useful. Just to give some context, I'm from Southern Africa and I'm involved in a regional program. It's an ambitious regional program covering 4 countries in Southern Africa, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Malawi, and Zambia. And a cohort of universities is trying to create a regional hub of knowledge hub, whereby we are trying to promote to advance scholarship on the agroecology, because generally what we tend to find in this part of the world is that there are a lot of practitioners of agroecology, but there are weak links between the universities and practitioners, farmers, smallholder farmers that are engaging in agroecology. So we are trying to push agroecology, a scholarship on agroecology, and there are a lot of things that are unknowns, things that are not clear on, in terms of maybe things like how do you handle many people, different knowledges, different people coming together, collaborating. How do you make the flow level? And you really touched on most of these things. Even I think it was quite an elaborate presentation. The river approach that you used, it was quite useful, and we'll come back to you later with some more questions, just to get guidance and possibly, we share with you our experiences as our process unfold. Thank you.
Cómo se desarrolla nuestro proceso. Muchísimas.
Thank you, Witness. I'm really glad to hear that it was useful for you and the important work you're doing. Nice to know that there's resonance and relevance from what we're doing in a university to something that you're doing so far away, not in a university, but that it's still related work. Sofia Martinez wanted to share something.
Okay. I'm Sofia Martinez from Colombia. I cannot. From Agroecology, and something that I'm rescuing from the group in which I was is of horizontal education from different institutions and different focuses from different countries, for example, from Latin America, and different experiences from the University of Vermont. And it's very important to point out that there's undergraduate programs or masters take into account territories and the dynamics of the territories in a way that the communities organize themselves and the process, the agroecological processes that involves. Thank you.
Sí, soy Dani Salvatierra.
Yes, I'm Dani Salvatierra. I'm speaking from Bolivia. And one of the aspects that got my attention to participate here is that you have a very big campus to have some practices there. We are in a context of climate change and of struggle and of climate variation in my country. In fact, in the city where I live since 2024 and on, there are predictions that are not very good for climate change and a very strong drought that is going to be lasting many years. And just like me, many farmers are worried about learning practices and diversity of combination of crops to face this climate change and this drought, this very strong drought that is gonna come. So I'm very motivated by your campus. I think that's the way of getting theory into practice. And agroecology is a line that is taking a lot of strength. In all the world, we are evaluating what the people, our ancestors, how they manage their crops and their cropping techniques. And that's what's going to stay. And what it's all about is to strengthen different models and new models. So it's might be a little difficult in an online course because the practice is very much needed. But I think we will find the way, and we'll find a way to find the path to complement and to have a more integral training. Thank you very much.
Okay. Bueno, muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Yo estoy hablando desde Colombia.
I'm speaking from Colombia, from Cali.
Represento a la Universidad
I represent the University of Colombia in Palmira and the research team in agroecology.
Bueno, respecto a la primera pregunta.
For the first question, how does this align with our political views? And the answers that we had in our group is that agroecology and what is being taught in the program is to match theory and practice. So you can go deeper in the knowledge and also you can have a more clear reality. Let me wait. Let me just confirm which language I'm speaking in. I don't know how to do it. Well, I'm going to continue. So also, agroecology is a way, it's like an option, one more option to produce. And that is also very important that the students know other realities and that they can compare it. On the other hand, another of the participants, there are institutionalities and participations through this program that we can recover some of the traditional knowledge, and this gives it a lot of strength, and that also inspires other people. Reconnecting and to have awareness of health in the environment. And we were also talking about the construction of habitat and how to slow down and make the exercises that you are all doing through the seminar, like breathing, for example. To be here and now, and that we are aware that the Earth works in a certain velocity and we should not go faster. We have to stop and observe and decide how we're going to function, and we synchronize with it. They were also talking about social sciences, of intersectionality, and on the other hand, they were talking about decolonialism and the inversion of roles, for example. And that's it. And for the second question, we didn't have enough time to work that second question.
Thank you for sharing, Carolina. Thank you, Tabare. Go ahead.
Gracias. Bueno, en nuestro
you.
grupo tal vez.
In our group, maybe we didn't answer. Well, first I'm going to present myself. I'm Tabare. I'm saying hello from the mountains with rain now in Chiapas, in Mexico. I'm in the group of massification of agroecology of Agroecological. And in my group, it was Amaya, Caterina, Chelo, Laura, and me, Andrea, and me. We didn't answer the questions, but we did reflect. We did go sort of around them, and then we did talk about them a little. And one of the challenges we talked about in this process, pedagogical processes within institutions, is how to not leave out people who have different experiences of life or material conditions that are different, but that can be very important in the transformation of agroecology. Because many times these programs are focused on agroecology, but there are people who haven't developed the skill of writing, and the program doesn't offer that. So automatically they're set aside. Or when they're inside, it's a very painful process instead of being a joyful learning process. That's a challenge, I would say, that we were talking about. And also from generation distance, people from 20 years old, for example, some of them are working in the field and are looking how to train themselves or within their territories, but face certain challenges that they cannot access either land or training or formation processes. And another thing that we talked about is how some institutional processes do not relate these links. How do we strengthen these processes that are working? Because from the institution, it's very hard and it takes a lot of time. And also some of the links are very weak with the organizations. So there are different methodologies that are looking how not to break that link with the methodology of alternance, for example. Online things might help, but they cannot, it's not the same as being in person and the warmth of being together. But it's very good that from different territories we can be talking. Something else that we didn't get to talk about, but that is also a challenge, is that interdisciplinarity. How can we do that? I think there's a challenge there. And that's more or less what we talked about.
Gracias, Tabare. You bring up so many beautiful, important points, and I think they are the perfect segue to the closing remarks from Marta and Ernesto. So I will mute myself, but I'm so grateful to share space with you all today.
Muchas gracias a todos y todas por acompañarnos.
Thank you everyone for being here and for giving us a little bit of your thoughts and reflections. This is why we are doing
diálogos que estamos teniendo.
Dialogues.
Thank you everybody for coming today and for sharing your reflections and your thoughts about our program. And this is what we're really trying to do here in these dialogues with Let's See. I'm going to pass it on to Martha, and then we will go to Colin, and I will show a slide of the next sessions. Thank you so much. Muchas gracias. Se cuidan.
It's impossible, I feel like, what's been given us to wrap this up with a bow and say, this is the conversation we've had today, because there's so many threads and there's so...
Porque hay tantas ramas, tantas piezas que todavía
hope that this is just the beginning of connecting and rethinking and reimagining what's possible. One of the things that came up is this idea of how we combine multiple ontologies and multiple cosmovisions in the same conversation. And I feel like that is at the heart of how we figure out how to be in conversation around agroecology across the globe. Something else that came up in groups is this idea that we should lean into this network. And as we want to have more chance to not just think about agroecology, but to live it and taste it and touch it and practice it, that we should have hubs so that you don't have to come to Vermont. We can help connect you to something that's closer to where you are. And so in that way, we can be exchanging. So I like these seeds that are being planted. And I think it's so important to lift up what Tabaré just said about the different ways that we learn and the different ways that we express what we know, and how this format is not the best for everyone, and how we work around or through that is something I hope we keep continuing to engage with. And there's never enough time. So we will stop here, pass it back to Colin, and talk about the next time. And thank you all so much for coming today and all that you've shared.
Thank you, Martha. So just to close, we've shared some links. It seems like maybe someone's having trouble with a link to the future webinars, but they're on our website. We'll be following up with an email with some of this information. So we're gonna share the presentation, the PDFs of the slides that were shared today in both Spanish and English. We're going to see how the recordings of the session went and post those online if everything went according to plan. We also collected some of the syllabi or the learning plans for some of the courses in our program to share with you. And we're going to be trying to build a repository of each of the programs that are presented in the Let's Eat webinar series. So please join us in the next sessions. So Ecosur, their Masters in Agroecology program, will be presented in the next session in April. And then we're going to be trying to fill out this schedule for the rest of the year. It's really important to think about how agroecology is really specific to place and context. And so too are programs specific to a context, whether it be the geographical, the institutional, whether it's an undergrad program, a graduate program, or a professional program. And that's just in the context of higher ed learning. And there's all this learning that's at the forefront of pushing agroecology forward that is being rooted from a community and movement perspective. So we're really happy to have hosted you all here. Thank you so much to the interpreters. Thank you to the Let's Eat working group. Thank you to everyone that's come here, all my peers and friends at the Institute for sharing today. And we humbly look forward to sharing more and hearing from you and staying in relationship as we go forward. So enjoy the rest of your days, and thank you again. Take care.